Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Mess. So today we're going to continue the series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, and it's been 48 hours since we had a Nintendo 64 preview, and that means a whole host of changes have come to the current core. Because Robert or FPGAZumSpass cannot be stopped, we don't think he sleeps, he just keeps iterating and bringing us new features. And there's a couple big ones for this core, which actually came out yesterday, but I promised myself I would take the day off. Now, if you don't remember, I showed you guys Yoshi's story a few cores ago, which was only like 4 or 5 days ago. The title screen looked absolutely spectacular, everything looked good until you actually got into the game, and then the rendering mode, it just absolutely went to this Hall of Mirrors effect, which is actually quite pretty to see on screen, but definitely not how Yoshi's story is supposed to look. Well, as of yesterday, Yoshi's story looks exactly like it should, and that's down to a specific rendering mode that only a few games on the Nintendo 64 use. The other two that we know of actually use TLB as well, so they're not currently playable. But this is a gigantic improvement, obviously, over what you just saw, because Yoshi's story is now 100% playable in the current core. Now, this has been done in just a short amount of time, and I did record this voiceover only an hour after this core came out, so nobody really knows if you can actually beat this yet or not. Hopefully, by the time that this video comes out tomorrow when you're watching it on Sunday, we have an answer as to whether or not Yoshi's story is able to be completed, but we shall see. But just getting this level of improvement is so much fun, because there are still games on the core that don't work, not because of TLB, but other rendering modes or other issues, and seeing them come alive is absolutely spectacular, because that's where this core currently is. Over 80% of the North American games are playable, so now once there are improvements, it might only be to a game or two, but it might be to a game so fundamentally important to the Nintendo 64 like Yoshi's story, it just makes everybody happy. Now, I'm not going to pretend that this is anywhere near as good as Yoshi's Island on the Super Nintendo, but honestly, it's still a really fun game. It's cute, it's colorful, it's charming, and it is one of those games synonymous with the Nintendo 64, so having it playable on the current core is just so much fun to see happen in real time. And as much as I do like this game, it's definitely not the best thing on the system, but as far as an artistic style is concerned, it is an absolutely spectacular game to look at in motion, and with all of this kind of cardboard cutout effect that Nintendo would go on to use a ton later in more recent Yoshi games, it does look awesome. And if we turn off all of the different video options, as we've shown you in previous cores, the pixelation actually sharpens up those little cardboard cutouts, the diorama look, and I think actually helps sell the illusion better of this being a real crafted world. But leave me a comment down below and you tell me whether or not you like it like this, Hall of Mirrors effect, or if you actually like playing the actual game. That's kind of a joke. Everyone's going to love Hall of Mirrors. It was one of the funniest things to see in the core development, and I did love it. Now, another big feature, if you go into the menu on the current core, you're going to see a full screen option, which is going to give you 16:9 in games that support it. This is not going to be for every single game on the Nintendo 64, but some games will support widescreen, whether inherently or patched, and you can see here Donkey Kong 64 running in widescreen is just such a wild, trippy thing. PlayStation 1, Sega Saturn, Nintendo 64 were mostly known for being 4:3 standard definition consoles. It was only a few bits of hardware back in the day that could do 16:9 output natively, but seeing 16:9 here on the current core is just a wild time. Just be aware that, like I said, not every single game will support this, and big thanks to Andy D for sending this over. He played Donkey Kong while I played everything else. But this is just another fun addition to the core and a new way to see a game that you probably know, love, and remember. And for all of you that do have your MiSTers hooked up to HD TVs and aren't running analog, this is going to give you even more screen real estate on your current setup. And as you see here, we get into the world. This does extend out the edges of the screen, but it is not extending out the character models or anything else. This is proper widescreen, not stretched to 16:9. They are fundamentally different things. One looks incredible, one doesn't look good whatsoever. But here in Donkey Kong 64, seeing it run in widescreen is just an absolute trip. But the sound is also awesome as well. You know I love giving you guys sound samples, so watch Donkey Kong 64 in widescreen 16:9 while you listen to some awesome music, and I'll be right back. Such a soothing sound effect, and it just looks so incredible in 16:9, especially when Donkey Kong dives into the water here and goes swimming. Seeing this run in widescreen makes it feel like an entirely different game, and maybe it's been some years since you've replayed Donkey Kong 64. Well, now you can do it in a more modern looking 16:9 on the current MiSTer core, and that is absolutely awesome. Now everybody, and absolutely everybody, keeps asking for more previews for more wrestling games, so we're going to take a look at WCW Backstage Assault. Definitely not my favorite game, but it is one that currently works, and you guys have been wanting to see it a lot. So let's see the match of the century, two Doug Dillingers fighting each other. I know that everyone loves wrestling games on the Nintendo 64, and I remember fondly playing them back in the day too, but I actually don't think I had WCW Backstage Assault, so leave me a comment down below and tell me if you had it or not. But as far as the current core is concerned, a few cores back up until today, this game has been 100% playable. You can have fun with it, you can do multiplayer, you can make two old men in polo shirts wrestle each other in the backstage with a tire fire and a flammable barrel going off. It is just what the game does. It makes no sense whatsoever, but honestly, does anything about wrestling really make much that sense? Honestly, I don't think so. But it is so much fun just to see these things happen. Everyone has a bit of nostalgia for the Nintendo 64. There's always that game that everyone loves, and it seems like everyone loved wrestling games on Nintendo 64 because it is still one of the most requested things about the channel when we talk about these previews. But I love these two dudes. They look like they're about ready to go out to Home Depot for the weekend on a dad excursion. They've got their dad shoes, jeans, and polo shirts, and they're just fighting in the backstage. It's such a weird vibe going on, but if it is a game you want to play, and a lot of you have asked to see it, so I know it is, you can definitely play it on the current core. Now moving back over to Vigilante 8, this is another one I wanted to take a look at because we have these new screen improvements as far as the filtering is concerned, and I think that it does look a lot better. Even if you do see the skybox is still replicating, but it actually doesn't really make too much of a difference in the game because you really shouldn't be looking at the skybox. Now this is just another game on the Nintendo 64 that I absolutely fondly know, love, and remember. It is such a great game, especially if you have friends over. Just run around and blow stuff up, but it's just such a fun time. I remember this game, I've loved it, and being able to play it again on the current Nintendo 64 is an absolute blast. And I do think that this is one of the better games graphically on the core and the Nintendo 64 as well. Even with that skybox replicating, all of the textures look great. This game has always run smoothly even on real hardware, and the first person combat view just always worked for me. It's an arena demolition derby game with shooting aspects, and it's just an absolute blast to play in real time, especially when you get in the behind the wheel mode and hunt your enemy down and just shoot at him as you're running around. Kind of feels like a post-apocalyptic Smokey the Bandit, and honestly that's not a sentence I ever expected to utter in my life, but I was watching a Burt Reynolds movie last night, a great American actor. If you say anything else in the comments, I'm definitely going to ban you. All jokes aside, I'm not going to ban you for Burt Reynolds, but he is great. Now moving back to Vigilante 8 after that massive tangent, just seeing this again on the core is awesome, and this game has a really good funky soundtrack as well. So now that I've blown that truck up, let's go hunt down another enemy, and I'll give you about 30 seconds worth of music, but don't go anywhere because I have more games to show you that just work. Yeah, the music sounds great, the game is great, you drive around, you shoot out the window, and you blow stuff up, or as we like to call it, a random Chicago Tuesday night. Now let's move on to the new Tetris. You guys keep asking me to talk about this game, and I haven't yet done it, so now we're doing it today. And I 100% understand why you guys would want to see something like this, because Tetris is still one of the most popular games of all time, and I get it. I'm not the greatest at the game, but I do have a couple different versions of the Grandmaster on the Taito Type X2, and they definitely get a solid amount of gameplay in my house. And I think this is hilarious that they spent all this time making this fully 3D animated intro for the new Tetris on the Nintendo 64. It's basically the only 3D in the game outside of the blocks being slightly in 3D and having a little bit of shading within the game itself. But this was a game like maybe 2-3 weeks ago that really didn't work too well whatsoever. And now it is just here. This is the Tetris you remember, but apparently you can't really slide pieces around on the floor. That was my mistake. But tell me down below what your favorite Tetris game is. I've always been playing the Grandmaster just because I have it on some arcade boards, but I know there's so many Tetris fans out there just based upon people requesting gameplay of this alone. and I would be curious to hear what you guys like. And I do think this is a good version of Tetris. I'm really surprised it came to the Nintendo 64, honestly. Prioritizing so many 3D games on the console, it did seem a little bit odd that this made it there, but I guess that Tetris and Nintendo just have such a long history together all the way back from the original Game Boy, that it's one of those things Nintendo always has to have some form of Tetris on one of their systems. Puyo Puyo Tetris is absolutely awesome in my opinion, and that does get a lot of gameplay on my Switch. But this is another game that's definitely improved and one that you guys wanted to see played on the channel, so if you're looking to get a couple of rounds of Tetris in today, you can just 100% do that. I don't know if you can ever even actually complete this game or if it just goes on forever, but as far as I can tell, outside of just losing for losing's sake, this is 100% playable and you can probably see the credits. Now another game that people wanted to see, because I've already showed Mario Party 1 and Mario Party 2, no surprise we're going to be talking about Mario Party 3. These are all awesome games, the entire franchise is so much fun, and this is the type of stuff you take out on game nights when you have friends over, and you're going to be able to do that with your MiSTer FPGA, which is just absolutely awesome. I do like playing games with friends, and something like Mario Party working, it's just an absolute blast, and I love this little dice character here too. Can't remember if he has a name or not, I think it's Tumble, he just said it, but it is just so funny. It's fun that Hudson Soft worked with Nintendo to make these games, and you can play every single Mario Party game on the Nintendo 64 right now. I have played in my spare time with the original Mario Party with my wife. We were able to get an entire game in, there was no issues whatsoever, and she did end up winning in the end, which means that she absolutely crap talked me the entire way. When she wins a game, she 100% lets you know she won and you lost, and there is no end in hearing about it. So if you want to play Mario Party 1, 2, or 3 with your family members and either crap talk them when you win or hear it for 48 hours when you lose, you can't do worse than this. And the sound, also awesome. I think some of the best music in any Mario game on the Nintendo 64 is actually in the Mario Party games, but you leave a comment down below and tell me why I'm wrong, because you do seem to love to do that. I'm kidding. Last video I called something Pokemon Snap, not Pokemon Stadium, and I definitely got a lot of comments about that, but hey, it happens. You make a lot of videos, sometimes Snap and Stadium get muddled in your head. But again, if you want to play any of the Mario Party games today on the current Nintendo 64 core, just have at it. That's where the core status is on most games right now. Just pick up your MiSTer, plug in a controller, load up a game, and you're off to the races having a great time, or in my instance, you end up losing and hearing about it for the entire weekend. But that is the current situation with the current Nintendo 64 core as of the recording of this video. It is 3:15 p.m. on Saturday, and I do need to timestamp these because I have no idea what Robert's going to do in the background. But it's awesome to get Yoshi's story, but the big one for me is that widescreen toggle giving you that widescreen Donkey Kong 64. I love widescreen, and in the Nintendo 64 games you can use it on, it is an 11 out of 10 in my book. Leave me a comment down below, tell me what you want to see tested next. I'll have a new video when there's a new core, but it's back to my weekend. See you next time. Bye bye.